playing the Miracle deck, it's hard for me to pick against him, honestly.
Yeah, we talked about earlier, Eddie Solis, a former JSS champion. That's a term from over 10 years ago.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring it back. I wouldn't be where I am right now if the JSS did not exist. Delver's Secrets to start things off.
All right, Delver on turn 1. I mean, it's hard to say someone's a huge favorite when the decks have as much overlap as they do. You know, Eddie Solis has a more aggressive style. He has cards like Delver. Joe Lossett has cards like Sensei's Divining Top, which are pretty good.
Tries to trigger the Delver, but it's not going to flip. Solis playing at a pretty quick pace. Going to attack here for 1.
Yeah, so I think despite all the overlap in the decks, Eddie's got to be decently aggressive here. As you see, he has the possibility to make a second Delver or a turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic. He's going to go ahead and opt for the Delver here.
You saw him play a Plateau for the turn. Most of the times these decks don't have that card, but there's just one of those here in Solis' deck. You see Lossett's just going to play a Plains, pass the turn back. He does have a copy of Terminus in his hand. Daze is going to flip over these Delvers, so hit 1 and hit 2.
Yeah, now the question will be if Lossett has a way to brainstorm that Terminus on top.
Yeah, that's the spot he wants to be in. Of course, he could just spike 1 off the top, but right now he's under the gun in a pretty bad way. He's going to draw a card. That's not a Terminus either.
Yeah, he's taking 6, and this could get pretty brutal pretty quickly.
Oh, there's a Brainstorm that he was looking for. That's good to go. So hit 1 is Caracas, 2 is a Tundra, 3 is a Mystery, and he's going to set some cards back here in momentarily. But I think you and I have a pretty good idea what's going on top.
Yeah, I think Terminus is going to go on top. He puts Terminus, and it follows it with an Entreat the Angels.
A little scary that he's going to go down to 7 here, presumably.
He's going to go down to 7. He will have 4 mana in play, so he'll have enough mana to mount a pretty good defense if they get in a counter war over this Terminus.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they do get in 1. Here's the attack. Lossett is going to go down to 7. But now it's time to actually do something.
I mean, double Delvers is so aggressive, you know. It really forces your opponent to have an answer very quickly.
See, Solis actually wants to cast the Stoneforge Mystic or just hold up the defenses. He's going to hold up the defenses here.
Yeah, I really like that play. You have such a great clock on the board already if you're Eddie Solis. You don't need to add another card to the battlefield. Make Joe answer what you have right now.
Let's have a battle, shall we? Terminus is going to be turned over, so you're going to have to pay the mana for that. Solis, making sure he knows exactly how this works. This is the card I've drawn for the turn. I'm going to pay 1 mana for this. The question is, does the Miracle Trigger resolve first?
Exactly. So what I think I was asking him to pay for it. So what happens with Miracles, first you reveal the card, and then you're revealing it to Miracle it. And then once the card is revealed, then you have an opportunity to cast it for its Miracle cost. You may also not cast it for its Miracle cost.
I think the fun thing here is, how does this card work with Vendilion Click? Because it goes to your hand, but I think you have the ability to put it to the bottom with the click trigger, and then you can't actually Miracle it. So I think Solis is asking, okay, so where is this? Is this card in your hand or not? But when you draw a card, of course it's in your hand. So he can't actually Vendilion Click this card, and then he would actually choose that, put it on the bottom, and you can't Miracle it. So
yeah, the card is in his hand, and it just has a special ability to be cast for its Miracle cost.
Yep. So again, we're going to have a bit of a showdown here.
All right, so the white mana was paid. Joe is attempting to cast the Terminus for white. Force of Will from Solis. Exiling Daze, so Lossett no longer has Daze to worry about. He's not too concerned. He's pitching Spell Pierce to his Force of Will.
Lossett's going to go down to 6 to do this, which is a little bit dangerous, just because now he's in double Lightning Bolt range, but the job is done. Terminus is going to resolve. Delvers are going to go to the bottom, and now we work our way into stage 2 of this game.
Yeah, if you look at Solis' hand, there's 2 more Dazes in hand right now.
Will Joe try to cast Jace here? Will he try to just play a Snapcaster Mage and leave defenses up? We're going to find out. Especially when Solis does remove a copy of Daze to the Force of Will. It's a little suspicious, but also at the same time, Lossett can just be patient, which is something he always does.
Yep, ever the patient player, Joe Lossett, no need to go for the Jace there. You know, it's an empty board, right? That's where Miracles wants to be.
Snapcaster Mage here.
Yeah, this is on Eddie Solis' end step. He's going to go ahead and Snapcast a Brainstorm here. There was, and I believe there was an Entreat the Angels left on top of Joe Lossett's
that's
deck.
the first card he's going to draw, and that's the card he probably was hoping, okay, I take care of this stuff, and the next turn I Entreat the Angels, then I'm good to go. However, True Nemesis is going to put a huge dent in that plan, which True Nemesis does, which has caused some major problems.
Yeah, it's a 2-turn clock, so it's actually faster than the army of angels that Lossett could make.
Yep.
So the card he's going to have to fight over, he's going to have to get that Jace into play, I would think.
Yeah, that one doesn't. That one doesn't do very much either, just because of True Nemesis.
Right.
just can be ignored. So Lossett has to find another copy of Terminus here to actually work his way back into this, I believe. I think that's the only card he can find to get himself out of this situation. Could sword his own creature, stuff of that nature, but I think it is end up going to be relying on Terminus here, which he does have 4 copies of in his main deck.
The difficulty is that Solis has a pair of dazes in his hand. Even if Lossett's able to find the Terminus, it's unlikely he's going to be able to resolve it, as he's going to have to resolve it promptly.
Yeah. Here's a Jace. Is it time to daze? It might be.
How much does if you're Eddie Solis here, do you daze? You know, True Name Nemesis is the card that matters, right? I think this to me feels like a bait spell.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It does feel like a bit of a bait spell. But at the same time, I kind of think Joe needs it. But then again, the top might be the more important thing that's out here.
Yeah, well, the top 2 cards of Lossett's deck are already known and presumably don't help Lossett.
Yep, he's going to go down to 3 now from True Name. It's time to spike a Terminus.
He's got to spike a Terminus. He needs to miracle the Terminus.
Yep. Swords will buy him a turn, too. He can Swords his own Snapcaster Mage to go up to 5. Eddie Solis is going to sacrifice an Arid Mace to go get a Tundra. Shuffle pretty quickly here. And then I think we're going to see him deploy a Stoneforge Mystic in just a moment here. And that is what we're going to see. So as we work our way into the late game here, he'll have equipment ready. You see Joe shuffling, and he said, "I'm sorry." But honestly, I see that happen so many times.
Yeah. You're like, wait, I'm going to go back in the deck.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's just a bad habit from the player doing it. And there's Batterskull. Terminus looking even better now if he's able to find it. And Solis doesn't really have much of anything in his hand. A couple of Volcanic Islands, which Joe knows about, along with the Batterskull now. And Joe's going to spin his top right now. See if maybe that Terminus is the 3rd card down. There's an Entreat. There's something. There's not a Terminus. It's a blue card. Looks like it was a Venser.
Yep, so that's not going to be of any help.
Danger
And,
on.
yeah, I don't think there's anything Lossett can do here.
Well, I mean, he can look one more card.
One more, yeah.
3. I think that was a counterspell.
Yeah, Patty found a Terminus. He could miracle it on Solis's turn.
Just pass the turn back.
Yep, make Solis swing. Can't imagine he won't do it, though.
Yeah, bash you. That's it.
All right.
Eddie Solis going to win game number 1 here over Joe Lossett. Blue-White-Red Delver up a game over Blue-White-Red Miracles in very quick fashion, as we're going to bring it back to the booth here because we've got just one more trivia question for you. Matthias has the rules, and I have the question.
Rules here, as they have been in the top 8 and top 4, if you've been following us, is that Cedric's going to ask you a question. You need to tweet the answer with the hashtag SCG Premium of those answers at the conclusion of our tournament. 1 correct answer will be chosen, and that person will receive 12 free months of Star City Games Premium. But remember, to be eligible for it, you need to put hashtag SCG Premium on your answer and be following at SCG Live.
Now, oftentimes, I would ask you now, as our final trivia question of the day, of where are we going to be next weekend for the Open Series? The answer to that is Detroit, Michigan. Everybody knows that because everyone follows the Open Series.
Well, now we don't have a question. What?
I do have a question, though. The
All
question is, who will be joining Patrick Sullivan in the booth for coverage next weekend? If you can name the person joining P. Sully in the booth, hashtag your answer, SCG Premium, and make sure you're following it at SCG Live. And again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of what might just be a relatively short matchup here between Solis and Lossett, as Solis was able to win game 1 really fast.
I mean, 2 Delver of Secrets on the play will certainly help you do that. He had the 2, was able to push a lot of damage through, and then True Name Nemesis came in for the cleanup.
Yeah, and now let's keep one thing in mind too, that Delver is probably able to steal a game like that in game 1. But that's not something I think is going to happen after sideboard, because you take a look at Lossett's sideboard. He's got 2 Supreme Verdicts. We know he's got a main deck Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast, so he's able to add 1 more copies of each of those. So now he goes up to 4 of those effects. He's got 4 swords. He's got 4 Terminus, so that's 12. You have the 2 Verdicts. That's 16 ways to really handle a Delver draw. So I don't expect to see that kind of repeat performance from Solis, especially when he's on the draw. There are some other options here for Joe, but I think those are the big ones as we move forward.
Yeah, so Joe will have a lot more control over cards, like even like True Name Nemesis. You said a lot of control over Delvers. He'll be a much better control deck. As far as Eddie Solis' deck, the matchups become a little bit tougher for him post-board. He does have access to 3 Red Blasts, though, which are very strong in this matchup against Lossett. They can kind of put a thorn in what Lossett's trying to do, especially when Lossett's on a counterspell-based plan. He also has that last copy of True Name Nemesis to help him. I'd imagine we'll also see these 2 Grim Lavamancers be sided in the matchup. One of the things that Solis can do is he can just force Lossett to have more, like, Solis wants to be more threat dense. And when he becomes more threat dense, then that's more things that Lossett has to answer. And Grim Lavamancer, I think as we saw earlier in a match against Joe Lossett, was able to deal 8 damage, I want to say, over the course of one game.
Yeah.
So that card certainly with a lot of upside.
Our final match here. Eddie up a game. Blue-Red Delver. Been kind of reigning all over Legacy recently against Blue-White-Red Miracles here from Joe Lossett. Again, I think Lossett is still favored in the matchup, but, to be fair, it really just shows off the power of the Blue-Red Delver deck as we saw last game. It's very unforgiving. It can kill you very, very quickly, and it has just enough permission to get the job done. And True Nemesis was, as you mentioned, on cleanup duty.
Yeah, and remember, Joe Lossett is on such a tear with this deck, including the Invitational. He has currently won 17 of his last 18 matches with this deck. The only match he dropped was the top 8 match at the Invitational. The other 17 matches have all been victories for Joe. So,
I mean, you talk about how he's on a tear. I mean, we take a look at our Season 2 leaderboard here. You've got BBD leading the charge. But then after that, you've got Chris Van Meter. Eric Rill made a huge jump last weekend when we were in Milwaukee. Lossett making presumably a huge jump here. He's in 8th place right now. You see he's got 81 points. But, I mean, you can add a bunch of points to that total. He could jump all the way up into 4th place right now. And it was funny because when we talked to him, he said, again, he got here off of a travel voucher after some unfortunate travel at the Invitational. And he's like, if I do well this weekend, I'll consider flying other stuff. And he's like, and if I do bad, then, whatever. I'll just move on and we'll think about doing something else. But not only is he doing well, he's looking to actually win this tournament. And I even said, well, if you win this tournament, what's next? He's like, maybe Detroit. The weekend after, maybe Nashville, maybe Cincinnati.
I mean, for those of you looking at it, so what the points breakdown, first place is, I want to say, 20 points.
Yep.
So at 81, that puts him all the way up to 101. That would, put him into 4th place, I believe, on the leaderboard.
Which is just a huge jump. A huge jump right at the beginning of the season, and that will incentivize him to want to travel and take one of those slots. I mean, you just watched BBD do it. BBD did it off of all of that crazy hard work and traveling. And it ended up paying off as he was able to catch Huey Jensen, pass him, and hold on at the Invitational to earn his ticket to the Players' Championship.
Exactly.
So, second is 15 points, and that's, that's still quite good.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
he's still going to make a big jump.
He's already moved up into, I believe, the top 5 with his performance today.
Yep. And, again, even a second-place finish might make him want to go to Detroit and other stuff here, and that'll be fun to watch. And it's really funny, too, with Joe, because, again, we think of him only as a Legacy player. He has won Standard Opens in the past. I know San Diego at the beginning of last year, he won a Standard Open with the Humanimator deck. And then we think of him being so great in Legacy, and trust me, he is. He has 8 top 8s in Legacy Opens. He only has 1 win in a Legacy Open, which is crazy to think about, even though he does top 8 a lot with Miracles. But the point I'm trying to make here is that he is traveling to Open Series events based solely off the fact that he thinks that if I play in any Legacy Open, I think I am a favorite to win it.
That's a pretty big statement to be making.
Yeah.
To win, especially, these are hundreds of people playing each of these tournaments.
Yeah. And there are people, I'm sure, who play Legacy just as much as he does, but he is so proficient with playing this Miracles deck, and he plays it so well that, I think it's a pretty bold statement to think that he can just fly around and win as much as he can with this deck. But, I mean, he does it all the time, every week, just about.
All right, so we are underway for Game 2. You see out of the board on Solis' side, he's boarded in Meddling Mage. That's a 4 of in his sideboard. Not the worst card, especially if he can figure out what some of the cards in Joe's hand are.
Lossett lets things off with a Mountain, which is an unusual start for a blue-white Miracles deck. He does have that small splash of red for the blast effects, so that's what he was representing on the opening turns of the games, and he has 1 of each in Red Blast and Pyroblast.
Yeah, his hand is in no way weak to Delver, and I imagine he's probably a little disappointed that Solis didn't make a turn 1 Delver. You see Swords to Plowshares, Red Elemental Blast, Pyroblast, Supreme Verdict, all in his opening hand. He is set to deal with Delver. The one thing he doesn't have right now is he doesn't have a top and he doesn't have a 3rd land, so he could get stymied a bit here.
Gonna search for a basic so he doesn't get himself open up the wasteland here, but here is the top.
Okay, so I'll stand corrected. He had the top. He doesn't have the 3rd land, but he does have the top.
Well, that's what the top's for.
Now, the question is whether or not Solis is going to go try to fight a counter war over this top. Lossett has backup of a Red Blast, so he'll be able to fight it. But if Solis has, say, a Daze and a Force, he can actually go ahead and counter this top. That would be a lot of resources to invest.
I agree. But, I mean, it might be worth having the battle over.
Yeah, a lot of Miracle's hands can get really weak when you remove a Divining Top from them. You know, you said you've seen Lossett keep lots of one-land top hands.
It's just like so unusual, right, to just fight over Sensei's Divining Top. It's like, do I really have to fight over this card? And I actually think the answer is just a resounding yes, because it's so good in their deck and it's so instrumental to making their deck function. Between all the fetching and brainstorming and chasing and everything else that this deck does. And also, I mean, top is really the card that lets them hit their land drops because they're a control deck that only has 23 lands.
I don't think it can be overstated how important the card is. The deck is really just a collection of kill spells tied together by the fact that top is just that good with fetch lands.
Yep. You see, Solis does have the mana. He's got both of his colors here, from the Volcanic and the Tundra. Now the question is, what does he want to deploy? Looks like it's a Stoneforge Mystic.
Yep, so Stoneforge Mystic actually cannot get red blasted here, so that's going to resolve. And he will have the creature in play. I don't know if he... Let's see what equipment he gets. There's obviously the Jite and the Batter Skull in the main deck. The Jite's already in his hand. I'm wondering whether or not he... Well, I don't know whether or not he boarded in a sort of Fire and Ice for the matchup as well.
I would be a little surprised. I mean, not that I think it's bad. I mean, having through equipment isn't so bad. The question, I guess, is Sword better than Jite in the matchup, too? I think you actually kind of have to ask yourself. I know watching Michael Majors play last week, and I know he boarded in his Sword, I think, when we watched him play in Charlotte a couple weeks back. So
yeah. It protects your creature from Jace, which is more, I think, than what Jite does.
Yeah, I don't think GT has a huge application in this matchup. Kind of say that GT is not that good of a card and should be boarded out, but that's just how powerful each of the decks are, and Legacy in general. Here's a Flooded Strand, going to allow the set to search for a basic plane. So red, white, and blue mana in play here for Joe. No wastelands to actually worry about here.
Yeah, Divining Top doing exactly what it's supposed to do, finding the card that Lossett needed at this. Right now, it was just more lands, shuffle, allowing him to shuffle the deck, reset, and continue to sculpt his draws.
There's one of the 2 swords that Joe does have in his main deck. A lot of times you see 4 swords here in Miracles, but just 2. I think part of the reason Joe cut those is so that he could start Red Elemental Blast and a Pyroblast. It's a bold move, but it's a move that's obviously worked out for him.
And so now that Stoneforge Mystic is gone, that Batter Skull will take an entire 5 mana to get into play. That's certainly not something that will happen for a while. Solis now, wants to try to stick something on the board. Once again, we have a board with just lands and a Divining Top, so he can go for a Meddling Mage or a Delver here.
Gonna go with the Mage, and if this resolves, I'll be very interested to see exactly what Solis does name with the card.
Interestingly enough, Lossett has the split of Red Blast and Pyroblast, so because he's playing that, he is protected from Meddling Mage, were Solis to name one of those 2, but he named another card that's actually in Lossett's hand, and that card is Supreme Verdict.
Yeah. And the thing I don't like about Meddling Mage in this particular matchup, like I understand wanting it just because you want to increase your threat density, is that it's almost impossible to name the right card against Lossett. Again, he's got 2 Pyroblasts, he's got 2 Elemental Blasts, he has 2 Swords, he has 2 Verdicts, and he has 4 copies of Terminus. So, you shut off one card, but, another one's going to be able to clean it up. So,
in a lot of ways, you're just playing a 2/2 for 2.
Yeah. There's a Delver of Secrets now as well.
Yeah, what that Meddling Mage is allowing him to do right now is he can extend 2 creatures on the board, and it will take 2 spells from Lossett to get those guys off the board.
I mean, that's just an exchange of resources, which I think Joe would probably be pretty happy to do.
Absolutely.
And Joe going to consider his options again. You see his hand here. He's got the Red Blast, a Pyroblast, a Supreme Verdict, and a Jace the Mind Sculptor here. He's got to worry about 2 blue creatures, so those blasts are very, very live, and it looks like he's going to fire one off.
It looks like he's going to blast them, I would guess, blast either of the creatures, then try to top into the 4th land and Jace bounce the other one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little risky for him to do that, just simply because he's opening himself up to a daze in that situation. You see Forcible is going to take care of this Red Blast, which, again, if you're Joe, I think you got to be thrilled with this exchange that takes place. He's going to spin a top now.
Yeah. So Solis running very low on resources. His remaining hand is just 2 pieces of equipment. And Lossett with 2 more removal spells in his hand, so he has the board covered, and he has a top and a Jace.
Yeah. It looks like Solis is pretty hell-bent on playing like a tempo game by playing 2 threats at once and really just protecting his Meddling Mage with a Forcible on the Red Elemental, or excuse me, on the Pyroblast. So it seems like he is just really, really hell-bent on, okay, I don't want to let these things die because I have to get some damage in. You're going to see a Delver trigger. That's going to reveal a Daze.
Daze not really a card Lossett's worried about. Daze isn't going to work on Red Blast, and it certainly won't work on Supreme Verdict.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Going to go after the Mage again.
Yep, so Pyroblast from Lossett. He has plenty of life points. He can afford to take some hits. Just for one trading. Pyroblast for Meddling Mage. We might see Supreme Verdict for the Insectile Aberration. And then the top and Jace, if everything goes according to plan, will carry the day for Lossett.
Yeah, I think that's the entire plan here. He's going to spin top one more time. Might sack the fetch land, might not. Again, you might be thinking, well, you know, with Supreme Verdict, he doesn't have to trade 1 for 1. But I think a situation, especially with GTA in play now, it's like, yeah, you do just trade 1 for 1, you move on with life.
Yeah, I mean, what he also can do, if he keeps that 5th land, he could play Jace, minus it, and bounce the Insectile Aberration. He knows that the last 2 cards in Solis' hand, he has perfect information. He knows their Batter Skull and Daze.
That's true. He does know both of those cards. The Delver Reveal showed Daze. The Stone Forge got Batter Skull, so he knows exactly what's up over there. So I actually kind of like that play.
You know, then you get an empty board with the Jace and the top, and in this situation, you still have the Supreme Verdict.
Hit 1, hit 2, hit 3.
I wasn't happy with that top deck right there, the last one. So you cracked a fetch land to try again.
Now, the question now, because it looks like Lossett found a Red Blast, which he's going to add to his hand here in just a moment, is would you rather save that or would you rather just cast the Verdict? It looks like he'd rather save the Red Blast. He can also just kind of blow him out here if Eddie goes to equip. Yeah, you just get to actually ruin his entire turn.
Yeah, so that way Solis taps 2 mana. Not that he particularly had mana to use otherwise. And you see a little bit of a misstep there on Solis. He drew red Elemental Blast for the turn, but tapped his red source.
Yeah, that's actually true. Now, of course, the Red Blast won't counter the Red Blast, but it would be able to counter the Jace, and now that's not a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah. The Daze is still good to counter the Jace at the moment, as Lossett does not have a 5th land.
Yeah, believe you me, he's not gonna play his Jace into a Daze.
Yeah, we see 3 lands on top for Lossett. What he is going to do is grab a fetch land, get land number 5, reset his deck, and find something new.
Yeah. There just isn't. I just don't think there's a world where he would allow his Jace to get Dazed. He's just too patient.
So what do you think, though, Jason, to this board? There's 1 mystery card. It can't be a Red Blast, right? Because there's white and there's not red mana up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that, you know, Solis did draw a copy of Spell Pierce, but, you know, the one thing is I'm not getting Dazed. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that cannot happen. Unfortunately, he tapped the wrong lands for that one.
Yep. So you can, that's it. Joe says, that's a Tundra. You tap poorly. This is favorable for me.
That's going to cost.
However, the thing here is that Joe has to figure out how to use his Jace right now because he knows it'll die from the blast.
Right. He has 1 turn, which I think means the answer is Brainstorm.
Yeah, I think now that he has the information of the blast, it's like, okay, I have to Brainstorm now to actually get some value from the card.
Yep. So he gets an extra card.
And he'll sack the fetch land because he wants to see new cards.
Yeah, well, he knows that the top 2 cards of his deck are both just lands, so that'd be a pretty mediocre Brainstorm.
Yep.
So a slight misstep for Solis, but one that's not going to punish him too hard. You know, like as you said, he will get to untap and dispatch the Jace with the Red Blast.
Well, we assume.
We assume. The difficult part is while he can take care of the Jace, we're still in that game state where it's just lands and a Divining Top. So it's still you're still playing into the Joe Lossett game plan.
3 cards to the grip here from the Brainstorm. Looks like a land, an Arid Mesa, and a Vendilion Click. So nothing crazy here for your Miracles player. But, I mean, Arid Mesa is pretty nice here in combination with Top, simply because he can clear it away again if he needs to.
Exactly. So you see he puts 2 cards back. This is off the Jace Brainstorm. He does have mana up to spin Top on the end step 2, which will help him look 1 card deeper. And now another blast drawn by Solis. Now, of note, which blast... Okay, he still has to tap the red mana for it. He uses Red Blast to take care of Jace. Now, was Red Blast the card he showed last turn, or did he show Pyro Blast?
He showed Red Blast last turn.
Okay. So Red Blast takes care of Jace, but no threats for Solis. And therein lies the problem here.
Yeah, he doesn't, I mean, he's just not pressuring Joe, and so now Joe gets free reign to just spin it up, and do whatever he like, and move forward accordingly. And as you mentioned, this is exactly where he wants to be. Board's clear. The cards he can work through that are in Solis' hand. You know, like the Red Blast in Solis' hand is annoying.
Sure, but, you know, like I said, all lands on a top. Great. I mean, I suppose there's a GT on Solis' side, so it's not all lands on the top, but it's pretty close.
In the draw step, this is a Vendilion Click. Pretty good Pyroblast target.
Yeah, I would assume we're going to see it Pyroblasted here.
So I'm going to counter that. And again, I think Lossett's okay with that exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. And looks like Solis will get a threat into play now. You're still in Solis' main phase, and now he's going to get to cast Stoneforge Mystic. We'll see if he boarded in the Sword of Fire and Ice. You know, see, the other two pieces of equipment are accounted for, and the
Doesn't even search.
answer is no.
And the top card of Joe Lossett's deck, he has found and entreat the angels, and he can play around days appropriately. And I'm pretty sure Eddie's hand are those two cards that Joe knows about in Batterskull and days. And if that's the case, he can entreat for 3 and be very happy.
Yeah, there is a GT and Stoneforge on Eddie Solis' side, but that's not going to compete with 12 power in the air.
Yeah. Basically, challenge accepted right there.
Yep. Time to turn the corner. Time to win.
Well, we think.
I mean, I suppose. Yeah. No, he hasn't put the entreat on top.
Yeah, he's put it in the middle. I mean,
you don't need to yet.
The thought process here might be that, okay, chances are Eddie is going to go, all right, I will equip my G-Tain attack because we have seen that line of play before with the Delver. Now, there's no guarantee he does that because he has a Batterskull that he might want to work into play. But again, this is a situation where, again, I don't think Joe is in much of a rush.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be.
Why don't treat the angels when you can draw Arid Mesa?
Yeah, like now we might just see him cast Supreme Verdict. Yeah.
I like the style.
He's the most patient guy I've ever seen in my entire life.
I'm not sure what he's playing around in this situation. It's because he has perfect information that I'm just like, well, I don't totally get it.
I just play super safe. That's all.
Yeah, well, isn't the other play like 100% safe?
It's not 100%
I like doing nothing. Don't get me wrong. Doing nothing's awesome.
Well, you're proving yourself wrong right now because you just want to do something. All I want to do is do something. You never want to do anything. Here's a counterbalance.
He has access to the 75. Okay, I mean, just on principle, you should be doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, he has no reason to do anything. That's the thing. Like, yeah, he could put the pedal to the metal a little bit faster if he wanted to. And I guess if we were in timed round, sure.
I mean, if there's a button in front of me that actually reads "win the game," I'm not like so sadistic that I'm just not going to press it.
He's just going to think about winning the game. That's all.
Like if the button truly just says "win game," you know, like yeah, you should probably hit it.
Maybe.
Nah, you're just like, not. Oh, I just love being ahead, so we'll just keep playing for a while.
Joe going to take a draw here. Got to spin top, I think, one more time. He's just going to play another top. Pass the turn back.
So counterbalance, top. So now setting up the lock to take care of all the, basically counter every spell here. We saw before when Lossett was playing against Bug Delver, this is a little more tenuous of a lock because of Bug Delver's ability to abrupt decay counterbalance. Mm-hmm. No such worry here in the matchup against Solis.
And there's a Tundra. And Solis is going to hardcast a Batterskull now. Not sure if this is going to resolve or not, depending on what Joe's top cards are. You know, if he has a Swords, if he has a 5, what have you.
Oh, he has a Force of Will, chilling in the top 3.
Yeah, that'll take care of the Batterskull. But the thing that actually Joe needs to be careful of now is that there is a mystery card here in Solis' hand. It's the second copy of Days. Joe knows about the first one. So he could actually end up running his entreat into a copy of Days here when he doesn't want to.
All right, so looks like he doesn't want 2 tops, so he's going to go ahead and shuffle with the Arid Mesa.
Yeah. So what he's going to do is he's going to draw entreat, Miracle, and I want to see how much he's going to pay here, because like he can play around 2 days, or he could walk into the second days, and that would be mighty ugly. And to be fair, like it's not the end of the world if he runs into the second days here. It's just more of just like an annoyance because my entreat doesn't resolve, and yeah, he's going to get double days now.
Yeah. So okay, if your opponent here's the play I would want to ask. So say if Solis is your opponent, now he goes for the first days. Do you pay for the days, or do you try? Like I think if you're set, the heads up play is not to pay for the days, but is to search for a 2. Why would he days unless he had another days? Right?
Well, I mean, do you actually get the opportunity to do that? Because okay, I sacrifice a hedge land, I pay and then I spin my top.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
He's
like, okay, days again. Now, the interesting thing here is that the days is going to go on the stack, and Joe actually has the opportunity to spike the 2 from the counterbalance.
So first, you can see if he can spike a 2.
Yes. As long as he has put his counterbalance trigger on the stack. So he does that, and okay. Okay. Alrighty, then.
That'll take care of... I'll take care of that line.
I am not going to pay for that, thank you much. Now my entreat resolves. So, there you go, my friend.
I mean, why'd you even pay for the first one, right? You could have had a top activation here.
When you're running good, you're running good. As Joe Lossett's going to untap with 3 angels in play. Now he's just got to contend with a Batterskull and a GT.
Sure.
This is an attack here for 12.
Gross.
Solis is going to go down to 4.
Now, there's a germ under that Batterskull, right? remember to put the German to play?
I hope. I do hope.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, they're going to... I think they're giving him the German token.
I think they're asking to see, make sure he remember the trigger or not. We'll see in just a moment here. Honestly, he may have forgotten.
Yeah, I don't think he gets it.
Yeah, I think he may have forgotten here. We'll see what exactly the ruling ends up being.
I also don't think it matters whether he has it.
I don't think it matters either.
So if you're going to learn a lesson about remembering that trigger, this is a fine time to learn it because, it didn't cost you a game. You were losing it anyway.
Because what ends up happening there is, okay, he has a germ token. He equips the GT, right?
Yep.
And he attacks, puts set down to 8. He goes up to 8, and he can gain 4 more life with the GT. But
That's
there's 12. Yeah, there's 12 power.
That's still not enough. You need to gain more.
Living Weapon is a trigger, and you do have to remember it. And fortunately for Eddie, him forgetting it that game does not matter as we move on to a third and final one here between Joe Lossett and Eddie Solis. Blue-White-Red Miracles against Blue-White-Red Delver.
Yeah, as we saw there, the matchup looks like it gets a lot better for Lossett after board. Not surprising as the style of deck he's playing, the slow grinding, all removal spells plus ways to card select. Doesn't surprise me that his matchup gets better. We saw more red blasts that game on Joe's side. The thing that Eddie Solis was able to board in is he was able to board into meddling mages, along with really a couple red blasts of his own. But I would say the extra removal pushes Joe into being a favorite here.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me one bit. Again, I think that's why Joe has such a nice matchup, because he is just overloaded on removal, and Eddie doesn't have enough creatures, I think, to work through all this removal. So it's just a really, really rough road ahead here for Eddie. As you do see the sideboards there, just the options for both players. Again, I think Joe's going to bring the Pyroblast, the Red Blast, and we know he's got the Verdicts in there. He's got some other options available to him. On Eddie's side, we saw the Meddling Mages come in. Wouldn't be surprised if there's another copy of True Nemesis in there. We saw Pyroblast and Elemental Blast from him as well. So pretty straightforward approach, and it's almost like they're in a mirror match, except for Eddie's attacking and Joe isn't.
That's a pretty decent way to put it. It does force Eddie to be more aggressive, I think, than Blue-White Delver naturally is. Blue-White Red Delver still is a lot like a Stoneblade deck in that it's generally the defensive deck, except when it happens to draw a couple Delver Secrets, then it just decides to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how this matchup works out, he's really forcing Solis into that aggressive role, which when Solis gets hands like the double Delver hand he had game 1, that's fine. But when he gets the more controlling hands, or the hands with disruption but not as many threats, that's when it really starts to be a good game for Lossett.
Well, it's almost time here for game number 3 between Lossett and Solis. Again, Eddie's going to be on the play. Good place to be, able to break serve.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the player on the draw has taken, well, that's not true. Joe has been on the play both of the games. This is the first time that Solis gets to be on the play. So Joe lost game 1 while on the play, took game 2, but this is where Blue-White Delver could get a really good start. He can always put a Delver Secrets into a Daze and never really let Lossett play the game.
Yep.
We did see that against Lossett during the Swiss. It happened to him where he got stifled and dazed over and over until while he was on the draw and never got to play.
Yeah, he got Delver drawn. And I mean, that's what it is. And this is going to be, I think, an attempt at it again here from Solis. Is he's going to sacrifice the Arid Mesa and go searching for a land. He stopped at Volcanic. He stops at Tundra. He's going to get Tundra. This leads me to believe, Matthias, that he has only one land.
Hey, look, but he does have Delver Secrets and Daze in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's real fun. So Delver's going to be there, and it's not going to get removed on the first turn.
It's funny because when he got Delver drawn, Lossett earlier, he ended up winning the match because he hasn't lost yet today, but he said to me in passing, he's like, if I would have played every spell one turn later, I'd probably win the game. It's like, I just wasn't patient enough, which is ridiculous because he's the most patient guy I've ever seen play this deck. He's like, I just need to wait every turn, one more turn for everything. Man.
Discipline.
Yeah. So we'll see if he's going to do that this go around here as he picks up a Brainstorm as his first draw step.
Yeah, there's at least a couple white cards hiding in his hand. The white cards tend to be good against the aggressive starts. You see a counterbalance. In his hand, starts off on Island.
There's a Spell Pierce. Yeah. This is the
Delver.
Yeah, this is the ability to be Delver drawn right now.
Yep, Spell Pierce. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so now he has the 3-man, he has the blue Wild Nacatl, and the reason Wild Nacatl, like I said, is never blue is because you can just play Wild Nacatl, and then you can just counter everything your opponent does, and well, that's pretty fun.
There's a Daze, there's a Pierce, there's a Jite. And we could even see they could Delver draw with the Jite, just try to get the game over with.
I mean, at least Joe played a basic, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a step in the right direction.
There's a lot of matchups you see in the Delver against Delver where then they started the game on a non-basic, and then it just gets real miserable for the other guy.
I absolutely adore this play.
So an attack, he's going to Brainstorm.
Because I think Joe's plan is like, I think he wants that Brainstorm to get countered. Like, if it resolves, that's awesome. But I think his plan there was just like, okay, if you counter this with the Daze or Spell Pierce, that's great. I would love for that to happen.
Good discipline on Eddie Solis' side to not counter it. You know, the game is protect the Delver, and Brainstorm doesn't kill Delver, so Solis has no interest in countering it.
I think Joe's just going to keep presenting threats to be countered. That's it. And he's going to put Eddie to the test every time of like, do you want to pierce this? Do you want to Daze this? What do you want to do? Do you want to add to your board or not add to your board? Because the entire time, he's got fetch lands and he's got basics in his hand. And so he's never going to open himself up to Wasteland. And he doesn't have to worry about Stifle. So he's just going to keep presenting threats that Eddie presumably has to counter.
Yeah, and if you look at the cards in Solis' hand, it's not too much follow-up for the Delver. He has a pair of Meddling Mages. He has a Spell Pierce. He has a Daze. He has a Stoneforge Mystic.
In comes Delver again. Lossett's going to go down to 14. Virtual 13 because the Arid Mesa. Eddie's going to, looks like, cast this brand new Stoneforge Mystic that was drawn. I'd be surprised if Joe cares about this.
Well, if Joe can, say, Spell Snare this, that would be huge for him. Because then he can Spell Snare it, play it around Daze, can cast a kill spell to kill Delver, playing around Daze, and the Spell Pierce is down on Solis' side.
Brainstorm going to resolve here. 3 cards coming for Joe. Going to be able to put 2 of the bad ones back.
You know, similarly, what he can try to do is he can try to find a copy of Supreme Verdict before he dies.
I mean, Terminus is good too.
Yeah, Terminus is good. You can fight over Terminus pretty well. Supreme Verdict, you know, there's no fight that can happen over it. So his sweepers are good in counter wars.
Stoneforge going to resolve. We're going to see Eddie search up an equipment here. He's going to get Batterskull immediately. He already has Jite in his hand. He did not board in Sword of Fire and Ice. And Joe is going to probably sacrifice his fetch on the end of Eddie's turn. We'll see if he wants to search for a basic or non-basic. Of course, it is Arid Mesa, so he can search for basic plains or get the basic mountain out of his deck to turn on his Red Blast effects.
We'll see which one he goes for. I think he has the white cards in hand, so we'll probably see him go for the plains.
Yeah, I don't think he has any of the red cards in his hand just yet, so I would be surprised if he searches for Mountain, but if he does search for Mountain, it's pretty telling of what he does have in his hand, so, or at least what future draws.
Yeah. All that really needs to do is resolve 2 removal spells. But Blue-Eyed Red Delver, most Delver strategies, very good at trying to stop your opponent from doing that.
I mean, he's definitely under the gun right now. He stops at plains. He gets a plains.
All right, so 2 basics into play. Wasteland still inactive.
Now, the interesting thing there on Eddie's side is that he could have dazed the Brainstorm. Joe would actually have to sacrifice a fetch land, and because Eddie hasn't played a land yet this turn, he could have replayed the Tundra to have Spell Pierce available.
Right.
As it stands right now, all he has available is Daze, and that's not the most difficult card to play around here. As Lossett has picked up an island for the turn, you see a couple copies of Counterbalance over there and a bunch of other blue cards. Looks like a bunch of Brainstorms.
Counterbalance is a great lock piece, but it's not helping Lossett right now.
Yeah.
The Brainstorms are good because they can help set up a Terminus, which is pretty important.
Gonna play a top here. Maybe try to have a little battle over this. That's in.
And you see he's baiting a counterspell there. He played the top and before playing land 3.
I think he's baiting Counterbalance. Because like he has a backup copy, and it's also this game isn't about Counterbalance either, but it's going to resolve. And I think that's another situation for if you're Lossett where it's like, if you counter this, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool too.
So Solis has not used his counterspells on anything yet, and he's let his opponent set up Counterbalance top. Doesn't that mean now? That would mean that that Spell Pierce is probably never going to get a chance to counter anything.
Yep. But again, just think about the way that Joe sequenced those spells, because he could have played Counterbalance first and then top. But top is the more important card of the two. Like, if Counterbalance gets countered, that's fine, because Joe has to beat what's on the board, and he'd much rather have a Daze actually go after that, I think, than anything else.
Yeah. Absolutely. So he has the lockdown, so if Lossett can deal with these 2 creatures in play, he should be set here.
There's Meddling Mage. Now, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what this card names, because, again, this is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If he names Verdict, you can turn on Terminus and vice versa.
Yeah, he's going to name one of the 2 sweepers for sure. I think you name Terminus because Lossett has more Terminus.
Counterbalance trigger does miss when dealing clicks the card revealed.
Yeah, he has more Terminus in his deck. He has 4 Terminus, and he has two
verdicts.
Supreme Verdicts.
And he names Verdict. So Joe could spike here. Maybe an upkeep spin? Maybe not. Maybe not. Draw the Vendilion.
Do you think he actively wants Vendilion Click here?
Opportunity to block is pretty appealing.
Yeah, I guess it's a 3-1. You could do a lot worse.
Yeah, like the opportunity to block, take a look at your opponent's hand, see what's going on. Just going to pass the turn back.
Yeah, he certainly can try to set up a Terminus. He does have both top and a pair of Brainstorms. He's a little constricted on blue mana if he wants to make that Vendilion Click play.
Solis going to draw a card here. That was a timely Pyroblast.
Yeah, so Solis still with all the disruption in his hand, with Pyroblast, with Spell Pierce, with Daze, with a pretty good clock here too. He's been very disciplined about his counter spells.
The interesting thing is that he named Verdict with the first one, but if he tries to resolve the second Vendilion Click, that's where things get a little hairy, right? Or excuse me, the second Meddling Mage, because the second Meddling Mage can name Terminus, and Lossett is almost locked out in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, Lossett will have to fight a counter war over that one.
Here come the attackers. Stoneforge Mystic hanging back on defense. Lossett is going to cast Vendilion Click here. I think it's interesting if this does resolve what he would have interest in blocking. I would assume it's Meddling Mage, but that situation is not going to come up here, it looks like.
Yeah, Pyroblast fired off at that Vendilion Click. And even if Joe had the counter spell, he wouldn't be able to fight back here from his hand. He can use top to win this counter war here.
Yeah, I guess the question here is, do I spin top in response, or am I just going to, draw a card with it?
I'm guessing, yeah, he's going to start by spinning. You mean if there's a Terminus on top, then he can probably let this happen.
Yep.
You see another Swords to Plowshares. He's kept that on top.
May I reveal? I may. There's a Swords. Do you want to daze this?
Yep.
There's daze.
Absolutely. So now he's going to... And wow, look at this. So he can daze. How good is this?
Hasn't played a land yet.
Hasn't, and he plays the land, and now he can Meddling Mage Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah.
I think...
Maging... Okay, so Lossett goes down to 4, I think, from that attack. Is it better to Mage Swords and Mage Terminus? Oh, wow. He didn't play land.
He didn't replay the land. I think he missed that he hadn't made the land drop. Wow, okay.
So that's going to start by brainstorming.
I mean, Solis is still going to flash in the Batterskull on end step.
Lossett has to find Terminus now. He has, no choice, I think.
Yeah, it looks like it has to be Terminus here. Especially because of the Batterskull. There's no way that... It seems unlikely that Lossett can keep Solis off 4 damage without Terminus.
I see his Swords there. There's a Blast that he can't cast. So he's going to put back the Red Blast and then Entreat the Angels. And it doesn't even look like Joe even found a land here. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that even though he put 2 cards back, so there's still a 3rd card to look at here. Let's not forget about that. He's going to cast Brainstorm now.
So if that 3rd card deep is... Well, he can go 1 more card deep here. So you can go 1 more deep at the top. So in one of these 2 remaining cards, if it's a Terminus, he will be able to Miracle Terminus off Divining Top.
Yeah, because what he keeps doing is he +1s himself every time it brainstorms. So now he's going to put back 2 more cards, which means the 3rd card down is going to be a mystery. Also, he found a fetch land this go around, so he can actually keep looking.
Right, and amusingly enough, when he draws the Miracle using Divining Top on Solis' turn, the Miracle window happens, but before he casts the spell, the Divining Top will be the top card, so it successfully plays around the Spell Pierce that's in Solis' hand, because the Spell Pierce will get knocked by the Divining Top counterbalance.
So he's going to pass a turn back. Solis. Probably going to activate Stoneforge Mystic. Yeah, there's your Batterskull. Boy, can he... Man, Joe has really tried to craft a situation where he can find Terminus to the best of his ability, which is all you can really ask for. Living Weapon trigger is going to happen. Here comes your Germ Token.
Yeah. Now, if last turn Solis had cast that Meddling Mage on Terminus, I think Lossett would be out of outs. As it is, he's still in a real tight spot.
That is a Volcanic Island. Will he be a Meddling Mage pre-combat or no? This is an attack with all the creatures. All right, Joe. Can you find Terminus or not? Here we go.
So he can look. He can actually. He could look at the third card deep before cracking this, I believe.
Yeah, he can. I'm trying to figure out if he. Because he has to go down to 3. I'm trying to figure out if he can red blast it. If he can red blast in swords and still live, because he can swords the Batterskull token, red blast the Delver, and then he would end because of the fetch line, he goes down to 3 and then would take 1 from the Stoneforge and 2 from the Mage. So
Yeah. So he had 2 options. He could have either looked 1 card deeper with the Divining Top, or he can play around Days. Looks like he has chosen the play around Days line.
any amount to see the third card down. No, I wanted to see it.
Oh. Well, actually, sorry, it's not even play around Days. What this lets him do is it lets him have Red Blast in case Eddie has any
Force
counter
of will.
spell.
Okay.
And now,
Spin that top.
does he find the Terminus?
Spin that top. Hit 1. Hit
1, no,
2. Hit
no, and
3.
I don't think he's there.
He put that back really fast.
I mean, there was a Mystic Gate in there.
And I think he would activate a top by now. That is going to do it.
Wow.
Eddie Solis
And he
does win this match 2-1. Blue-White-Red Delver takes it down over Blue-Red Miracles, the former JSS champion. Has a title again. Wow, congratulations to him.
Yeah, and so a really close game 3 there. Eddie Solis was able to, play that aggressive Delver game, get early tempo down, and hold on just long enough to deal damage on that last attack.
Yeah, never able to find a copy of Terminus for after sideboard, and just kind of got bum rushed there, unfortunately, for Lossett, where that's not something that happens a lot against Miracles, but that might be the best way to try to go about beating him. Like, he wanted to try to play the Delver game, but Dason's Spellpierce didn't really show up there very much, and he was able to get the job done. So, wow, congratulations, Eddie Solis.
Great patience on Solis' side with how he cast the Spell Pierce and Daze. Amusingly enough, he was patient when how he played the 2 spells, but at the same time, he never actually ended up using those spells in the matchup. He was able to save those 2 spells in his hand, and that forced, I think by saving the counter spells, it forced Lossett to assemble countertop to get around the counter spells.
Mm-hmm.
So he really stopped Joe from ever being able to cast removal spells. So the threat of those 2 spells and the patience with which Eddie used to not cast them really ended up helping him here.
Yeah, I mean,